It's 7:02. I'm late. I'm going to go over already, I can tell. My name is Leslie Truex, and I'm an author. I write fiction and nonfiction, and we have a ton of stuff to cover, so you're going to kind of learn more about me as we go along instead of me standing up here and boring you with who am I kind of stuff. But I do want to start out by talking a little bit about how I write, because I'm what's called a hybrid author, which means I do both self-publish and traditionally publish. And in some ways it's strategic about why I do that. And at least in one case, when I was starting out, self-publish was the best option and pretty much the only option. So you can do both. You don't have to choose one or the other. And what we're going to focus in tonight is traditional publishing and how do you attract the attention of an agent or a publisher for your book, for those of you that want to do that. And I don't want to come across like traditional is better than self-publishing or self-publishing is better. A lot of times you get one who, an author that does one and the author, and there's sort of this bickering between them about, yeah, well, you can't do this when I can, I think doing both is the best of both worlds, and there's a lot of authors who are doing it. So as we go through and I explain things, it may become clearer that maybe your book is better fitted to one or the other. Okay, or maybe you have this other idea and you're thinking, well, maybe an agent wouldn't want that, but I can do it on my own. And I do believe you've had people here talking about self-publishing. It's easier and more affordable than ever to do it. So I have traditionally published under Leslie Truex the Work at Home Success Bible, which I actually have the rights back to now, and I may go ahead and self-publish that when I finish updating it. And Digital Writer Success. Digital Writer Success was actually sold directly to the publisher, and I did not use an agent in that case. And then I'm traditionally published writing fiction under the name Jenna Hart. I write mystery and romance, so I have a 3-book contemporary romance that's out. All of them are out. I'm done with that series. And then I have a traditional cozy mystery series, think Jessica Fletcher type stuff, that the first book of that series will be out in February. It's called Death of a Debtor. It's a Sophie Parker coupon mystery. So remember it so you can buy it if you're a mystery writer, okay? I mean, a mystery reader. But then I'm also self-published. And I have a print and digital book about work-at-home jobs. And then I have 2 other books that are ebook only. They're kind of short, which is ideal for ebooks. And then I have, this shows 5 books in the Valentine Mystery Series, but the 6th book dropped yesterday. It went live yesterday. So I'm pretty excited watching my reviews coming in. So let's go ahead and move on and talk about the pros and cons to traditional publishing. The pros is there's still actually a little bit more prestige and credibility with a traditional publishing deal. But the gap between self-publishing and traditional publishing is narrowing. And there's plenty of self-publishers who don't really care because they're making money, right? So it doesn't matter to them. They're meeting their goals. But for example, if you want to sell a future book, to have in your query letter, oh, I was traditionally published by so-and-so, adds just that extra little bit of credibility over I have a self-published series. Okay, but I've done both. I've mentioned both in my queries. You get developmental and copy editing with a traditional publisher. As if you self-publish, you have to pay for that. And by have to pay for that, I say you have to pay for that. Never self-publish a book without an edit by a professional editor, ever, even if you are a professional editor, okay? They're going to give you that. So they're going to do a developmental edit, which means they're going to go through the manuscript and they're going to come back at you with all the stuff they think is wrong with it. And you're going to be like, wait a minute, this thing was done, And then once you've gone through those, it can be a couple of rounds, then there's the copy editing, and that's where they put all the commas in the right place and make sure the words are spelled right. They're also going to give you a professional cover designer, so you're going to have somebody that's going to make your cover. The cover and the title are the 2 things that readers see first. Think about when you go Barnes & Noble, what makes you pick up a book and turn over to see what it's about? It's almost always the title and or the cover first. So covers are crucial, and if you're a self-publisher, you should pay for one unless you're a designer, but traditional publishers are going to do that for you. You might get an advance. Advances are less than they used to be. We have a lot more, since the digital age, smaller presses that don't give any, or they give something kind of tiny. The bigger presses are going to give bigger advances, but if you think you're going to get a $150,000 advance, you have a very special manuscript. That is not the norm. It's very abnormal, okay? And they have the benefit of distribution, which is ideal for print, okay? Anybody can get their ebook on Amazon, Nook, iBooks, or whatever, format the manuscript, upload it, and it goes. But to get your book in the bookstore is hard. And you need a publisher that's going to do a print run, which means they're going to start out with maybe 5,000 books and they're going to send them out. There are smaller presses that use print on demand, which is the same thing a self-publisher uses. Those books cannot be returned unless they're using a special program, so bookstores a lot of times won't carry them. Okay, because publishers, bookstores don't want to take books that they can't return. Okay, but if you have that and you want to see your book in Barnes & Noble, which is kind of fun, you know, a publisher might be able to do that for you. And you might get some marketing help. You'll see in the cons section, it's less than you think it will be. They're not going to send you to be on the Today Show. They're not going to send you out on a tour. Everything you saw on Castle and Bones and all that kind of stuff, that's reserved for the Grishams and the Nora Robertses of the world. The rest of us get an advanced copy that's sent out to whatever their list is that they won't tell us. They might do some social media. They might make some graphics for you. Now, if you really push them and let them know you're serious, whenever I have pushed my publishers and said, I'm going here and doing this, will you help me with this? A lot of times they will, but there are limits to what they're going to do for you. So the cons are to a traditional publishing deal is you have to be vetted. You have to book it. You have to have a book that an agent thinks they can sell to a publisher. You have to have a book that a publisher thinks he can sell to a bookstore, and therefore the public. And you know, there was a time before self-publishers proved everybody wrong that if you couldn't get a traditional publisher, your book was no good. And we know that this is not true. But we also know the way booksellers and publishers work, that they do kind of stay within the lanes. And so, you know, the vetting process a lot of times is looking at that, not just the quality of the writing, the quality of the story, the quality of the information, but also does this fit within their guidelines. It takes forever to get a book published. If you started today, your book might come out in 3 years, maybe 2. Okay, you know, when you look at pitching the agent, then the agent's going to work with you to make the book better. Then it goes out to publishers. That could take, you know, a couple months to 6 months to a year. The publisher gets it. You start doing edits and reviews. That can take a couple of months. And then for whatever reason, it takes them, you know, 12 to 18 months to get it to market. I don't understand it, but there you go. So it can take a really, really long time. Editorial changes. They're going to do edits, and sometimes you're not going to like them. Okay, I've had some disputes, some discussions, but I've been pretty lucky that I haven't had to make significant changes. I do have writer friends that have had to rewrite their book, maybe a quarter of a book, a third of the book, maybe even a half a book. I can't even imagine that. I might just say, never mind, let's just write another book. And so you can negotiate sometimes with them, but they know their market. So, you know, you do have to listen to them. You may not have cover design input. The Work at Home Success Bible, which I don't have here today because it's not on the market anymore, showed up on my doorstep, done. And they said, we want a book about working at home for women, and it showed up, and on the title it said a work at home book for moms. Okay, so moms are women, but not all women are moms, you know, that's a very different thing. Lately, my publishers have given me input. You know, they ask me, what do you like, what do you don't like? They usually give me a couple covers to choose from. So that's not set in stone. You're going to get less marketing help than you think, so you better learn how to market. Okay, and that's true if you self-publish. You are going to be responsible for selling your book to the end reader. Returns on printed books, we all cry. If you ask any published author who has a print book that goes out to bookstores, say the word returns, they'll cry, okay? Because when they come back, that's like money gone, okay? And the publisher holds money, holds your royalties, holds part of it for anticipating returns. And you have a very short time with a traditional publisher to sell your book. So if in 6 months that book's not sold out and 1,000 books or 2,000 books are going back to the publisher, that hurts, okay? So now money, I mentioned money. If you're in this for money, you should probably get a YouTube channel and become a YouTube celebrity. It's really hard to be rich and famous as a writer, it really is. You know, the E.L. Jameses of the world, the J.K. Rowlings, you know, that's special. Does anybody know Andy Straka? He's a mystery writer who lives in Earlysville. He often speaks around. And I asked him once, I'm like, why do some authors, like, you know, it hit the stratosphere, you know, and others don't? And he's like, stardust. And they don't sell it on Amazon, I've looked. So, you know, I don't know what that is. So money, it can be a really strange thing. There's a lot of self-published authors that are making more money through their self-published books. My self-published book, per book, I make more money on that. But again, because of bigger distribution, a lot of times I'm getting more sales on my traditionally published books. So it's really hard to tell you if one is better than the other, okay? So let's talk a little bit about an agent versus a publisher. You can sell to a publisher without an agent, but there might be some reasons you should have an agent. So I just wanted to go through that real quick. Your agent's going to help you improve your submission. Agents know publishers, okay? So when they come back and say, you should do this to help you sell the book, you listen to them. I had an agent once say, we need to beef up the marketing plan, because they want to know how you're going to sell this book. They're going to improve the quality of the writing, okay? They have access to publishers, okay, right? They have a database. They send it out to all these people. So you don't have to do the research because they know them. Because your book is pre-vetted by an agent, a publisher is more likely to look at it. If a publisher has 2 manuscripts on his desk and one comes from an agent that he has worked with before, knows the quality of the work that is submitted by her writers or his writers, versus a manuscript that's come in cold, he's probably going to go read the agented manuscript. Your agent's going to handle issues like contracts. They're going to tell you this is good, let's take this out, let's not do that. Also, if you have any problems or disputes with your publisher, they're a good person to go to. I've had times where I've been like, they're not getting back to me. Why aren't they talking to me? And for some reason, they always respond to her faster than they do to me. They can hold on the rights for you, for overseas sales, foreign rights, movie rights, and all that kind of stuff. They can negotiate those for you. You know, Hallmark is buying a lot of sweet romances and cozy mysteries today. So, you know, if that's what you've got, your agent can help you sell that. You do have to pay them royalties, 10, 15%, depends on the agent, but they're also maybe able to negotiate higher prices for you. So you might get a bigger advance, you might get more royalties, you might get some other perks in there. If you don't understand publishing and contracts and all that, you might sign something and it may not end up being the best deal for you. So it's sort of like using a realtor when you sell or buy a house, you know, I mean, they can really help you save or make money, okay? The publisher, basically their job is to print the book or publish the book and get it out there. If you go directly through them, there are no agent fees. So when the royalty comes out, it goes directly to you. It can be a really good option if you have a book that is in a niched area that needs a niched publisher. So for example, if you have a book that would be ideal for a university press, or that is sort of a really narrow topic book, that might be a really good time to go to directly to the publisher. It can be harder to do multiple submissions to more than one publisher. They don't like it. Some of them will allow you to do it. And I can't say this for sure, but I have this sense that and you should tell them if it's out with multiple people, because then they'll be really mad if they find out it's out to other people and they've made you an offer. But if they know it's out to other people, you know, there's no urgency for them, because they might think, well, the last guy might buy it for you, so I'm going to go ahead and look at this one. I can't say that that's true for sure, but it is a little bit harder. My agent gets faster responses than I did when I was pitching directly. I had a book sit at Harlequin for nearly 2 years, and by 2 years, I mean 1 year and 11 months. Okay, when she contacted them, the response was within a couple of weeks. Okay, so that's kind of one of the benefits of having an agent. So how do you get an agent or publisher? Number one, You have to start selling your book now. And I know you're like, well, I don't have a book. Some of you are like, it's not even written, right? But you actually do have to start selling it now. And by that, I mean you have to start talking about it. You have to start building interest in people who are going to say, yeah, I want to buy that book. That sounds interesting. And this is why. Well, first of all, it starts by building your author platform. Okay? And this is one of those things that I always had a hard time describing and explaining. I had a hard time reading how other people explained it, and then I ran into Jane Friedman. And if you don't know Jane Friedman, you should go to her website, janefriedman.com. She has the inside information on all publishing, traditional and self-publishing. Her definition is the best and easiest to explain and understand, and it is: a platform represents your authority, your visibility, your reach to a target audience. So, if you're writing a book about tulips, what makes you a tulip authority? Have you raised tulips? Okay. Did you go to school to raise tulips? Okay. What is your visibility? Okay. That is, how is it that you're out in the world that people know that you're a tulip expert? Do you teach tulips? Right? Have you already written a book on tulips? Do you write articles on tulips? Do you have a blog about tulips? Your reach, and that is how expansive your visibility is. How many people know about you and your tulip expertise to a target audience? People who love tulips. Okay, if you're a fiction writer, authority can be a little bit hard if it's your first fiction book, right? Because you're like, I'm a mystery writer, but how do I become authority in mystery writing without having a book? But again, by talking about your book, Sophie Parker is a coupon mystery, so I talk a lot about coupons. I talk a lot about killing people, and can you kill people with this? I do a lot of research on how to kill people. And people are like, that sounds interesting, or they'll respond, well, if I'll be like, can you kill somebody with a golf club? And the response will be, well, what kind of club are you using? And so again, it's not authority in the way that we think of, expertise and being an authority, but still you're getting out there as somebody who is writing this book. Visibility is, again, the same thing as how am I doing that? I'm doing it maybe on my blog, or maybe I'm doing it through social media. I'm doing it by coming here and telling you I wrote a book where I killed somebody with a golf club, okay? And reach. How many people know about this? That's, again, the number of followers I have on Facebook. It's the number of you in this room to a target audience. Anybody who likes to read a cozy mystery about somebody killing somebody with a golf club, okay? So that's platform. I have a 3-hour workshop on this, and I have an hour to tell you everything about getting a traditional publisher. So I am skimming over this, but I do have some information up here about it. I do not have enough for all of you, I don't think, but I can email you, or Judy said I could email it to her and she could get it to you. And of course, over in Digital Writer Success, that book over there, there's an entire section on platform building for authors, in case you want to buy a book, okay? So why is it important? Well, first of all, your platform sells your book. When Truly Madly Deadly went out yesterday, people knew it was coming. I've been talking about it since I started writing it. I was apologizing all the time for how long it was taking. Then it was on pre-sale, and then yesterday it was there. And I was telling people, and I'm asking my fans to tell people, okay? So when that dropped yesterday, there were sales. If you wait till the day your book comes out, there are no sales, right? And remember I mentioned before, you have a short window of time to sell your book to make a publisher happy, okay? So if a publish date comes out and no one buys it, that's not good for your next book, okay? So you have to start selling now. Many publishers are not going to take a chance on you. This is particularly true in writing nonfiction. Some of you said you were doing nonfiction, where you really do. This is why you're seeing YouTubers and bloggers and celebrities getting books and hardly anybody else, because they know when those books come out, people are going to buy them. Part of the reason I was able to sell Digital Writer Success and the Work at Home book was because I had a following already. I could tell them, this is the size of my email list. Okay, this is how long I've been doing this. People know me for this. So it's really, really important that you start sooner rather than later if you want a traditional publishing deal. All right, number 2. Know your genre or category. This is going to come up several times, okay? Remember I mentioned that traditional publishers, they kind of work in a box, you know? And if your book is outside the box, you're probably going to have a hard time getting it to a publisher. But maybe you're not going to know that until you try. And there are some books that have come out in the last few years that did sort of go outside the box, and for whatever reason the publisher thought, I want to do this one. So I don't want to tell you not to do that, but you do have to understand genre or category, because it becomes very important in selling your book to an agent or publisher. Why? Okay, publishers don't sell to readers. Publishers sell books to bookstores. Bookstores have to put the books on the shelf. And how do they do that? They organize it by categories and genres. So have you all been to Barnes & Noble? You know, you walk in and the cookbooks are over here and the regular fiction's over here, and you know, over here's the manga and the mystery and the sci-fi. Okay, so they need to know where your book is going to go on the shelf. So you have to be able to tell them, my book is a mystery, my book is a cozy mystery, my book is steampunk, my book is, you know, a book on tulips, okay? Agents and publishers focus or specialize in specific genres or categories. Agents don't represent everything. Publishers don't publish everything. So you need to know where your book fits to find an agent or publisher that's going to take it. My agent fusses all the time because she's very clear on her website what she represents, which is pretty much romance and cozy mysteries. She very clearly states, I do not represent thriller or suspense, and yet she gets thriller or suspense queries. It makes her nuts, because it's like, how do they not know? You know, didn't they read? You know, you waste your time pitching to people who aren't going to look at your book. And it also helps you begin to think about marketing, because when you understand your genre and your category, you can begin thinking about who are the people that read this stuff, okay? Also, there's an expectation that you're going to stick within your genre rules, okay? Now, when you're successful, Nora Roberts, I don't know if you read her, she breaks the rules all the time, but she can do whatever she wants. I mean, really, she can, right? But if you're a new writer, and my agent said this to me once, because I pitched her a book idea, and she's like, well, no, that would never sell. And I was like, well, you know, Carolyn Hart does that. I don't know if you know Carolyn Hart, but she writes mysteries. And she says, you're not Carolyn Hart. And I'm like, okay, not yet, not yet. So if your genre or category has specific rules, cozy mysteries have very specific rules about, it's a small town, amateur sleuth, there's no swearing, there's no violence, there's no intimate bits, okay? It's very strict rules there. Romances have to end happily ever after, or at least happily ever for now. If they don't, it's not a romance. It might be women's fiction, but you have to know that. Okay? Because there's some people who will take women's fiction and represent it, but they're not going to represent romance, even though women's fiction a lot of times has romance in it, right? Okay, 3, finish your book. And by finish, I don't mean like, you know, you've just started and it needs to be written. Finished isn't a first draft, it's not even a third draft. Finished is like what you think is completely polished and prepared, ready to go out into the world, okay? So that means not only have you gone through all your drafts, but you've also revised and revised and revised. You've gone through and you've pulled out as many as the weak words as you can, the veries and the that's that aren't needed there. Although I have found people put that's back in after I take them out, so that's a whole other story. I have this weird quirk of starting a lot of my sentences with and but. So I do a search on my manuscript for every and but in there. It takes a while because there's a lot of them. And if it starts a sentence, I look, do I need it? And 99% of the time I don't, and out it comes. My agent says don't use dialogue tags if you can avoid it. Use deep point of view, or use emotion, you know, some sort of action. So I go through and look at those. Can I make those? So I'm talking about really sort of beefing up the story, tightening, fleshing it out, bringing up the quality of the writing. That is finished, okay? So revise, revise, revise. Quality. You want clarity, you want grammar, you got the punctuation. I actually brought you my checklist that I go through, the words that I search for, the varies and the that's and the crazy weak words that I don't need. Adverbs. Can I, instead of say walking quietly, can I say tiptoed? It's a better word. It's more, you can see it. You can see tiptoe, right? Okay. How to get help on doing that? Well, one is to have beta readers, which are people that you trust who will read your book, who will be honest with you. I have some beta readers, and they're great fans, so I always send them the book, but it always comes back, this was awesome. And that, pat on the back, that feels good, but it doesn't help me, right? So you want to also find the beta readers who say, do you know you called him George at the beginning of the book and Al at the back? Or did you know it was Tuesday and all of a sudden again it's Monday? Or this made no sense. Or you can't kill somebody like that. Or, and this is and critique groups do the same thing. I have critique groups, it's like, I don't know how you can do that. Or, how is the room set up? Because that blood spray would get everywhere, So you need this feedback because you're not going to see it. There's a lot of research on the internet, but you're not going to see it. There's going to be an expert. I wrote a book that involved gems and the Hope Diamond. And at the time in the group, there was somebody who knew a lot about gems and rocks and cutting them and stuff. And he was a really big help to me to get that book right. So beta readers and writer critique groups, obviously we have one in Fluvanna that usually meets on Wednesday nights, but most of them are here now tonight. And there's also the Blue Ridge Writers Club, also has a critique group that meets the third Friday out at Boar's Head in the afternoon. And so there's others as well, but those are just two in the local area. The other thing you can do is hire an editor, like a developmental editor, pay them money to go through pay them money to critique and be mean to you, basically, about your book. But they're going to help you find the plot holes and all the problems in it. Now, you don't have to do that. I don't do that. I rely heavily on beta readers in my critique group.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
How, you're using a lot of terminology here. How do you know where to go look for these people?
Beta readers? Initially, there were people that I knew that read the type of book I was writing, and so a lot of times the quality wasn't, again, it was that was really good, and so I would have to tell them what I'm looking for. It's like, he seems kind of mean in this scene. Did you think he was mean in this scene? Or, did this make sense? And then I joined critique groups, and through them, I would get critique back, and sometimes some of them then become beta readers, because at the critique group, they just get snippets each week. So kind of like when I'm done and revising, I might ask one of them, could you read the book for me? We had this wonderful lady here in Fluvanna, and she ended up moving to Richmond, and then unfortunately she passed, and I was so bummed because she was one of my best beta readers. For critiquing. If you have a book that comes out, or as you're building your platform, sometimes people will reveal themselves. For like this recent book that came out, some of my fans that are my most ardent fans, they're the ones that when I say, could you please share this, they share it. When I say, will you please leave a review, they leave a review. I gave them a free copy of the book to beta read.
Would you just like Google critique groups?
You can. There's some online. I've told you about some. There's some online. Talking to other authors and where they go, type of thing. I think that writing is a very solitary thing. So you have to get out sometimes. And maybe you don't want to go to a critique group, maybe that's scary, or I don't know, but there's a lot of writing events. Writer House has stuff, Blue Ridge Writers Club has stuff, there's lots of stuff in Richmond, James River Writers has, there's always stuff going on, and so I think a lot of times mingling with others. I like that better than dealing with people cold. I sort of like referrals or getting to know people before I start, and I'm not really that afraid of people stealing my manuscript, but it's like giving my baby away, it's like, not just anybody can take my kid, right? So.
How would you hire, is that hiring it? How would you begin with that?
I would talk to other people. I use a lady here at the lake to edit my self-published fiction. I know of a couple other editors, so if you email me, I could give you a couple of names if you wanted to, but it's the same thing. I sort of network. And when I first started, for example, I would go to Kindle boards or something like that and talk to people there, like who do you use or who do you recommend or what should I look for type of things. So online writer forums can sometimes be a resource as well, if you trust them, yeah. All right, number 4, write a proposal or synopsis. Okay, Well, let me go back. The proposal synopsis is a marketing tool. It comes after the query and it sells your book. So it's really, really important. So in a nonfiction book proposal, your goal is to convince this agent or publisher that this book is needed now. And if there's other books about the same topic, why is this book better, different, or needed at this time? And why are you the person to write this book? When I did Digital Writer Success, there's books on blogging, there's books on freelance writing, there's books on publishing, but none of them had all three, and none of them talked about how a writer could combine them all and have them integrate and work together to make a living writing at home, make a living with words. And I was like, and I'm the one to do it because that's what I do, right? And so what is in it, and again, I have this information in the book, are, about the book. What is this book about? It has chapter summaries. It has a marketing plan. It talks about who the market is, okay? It talks about the competition. What other books are out there and why yours is better or different or special. The proposal is the second chance after the query you have to show them what you've got. So it needs to be well written. It should be in the same tone as your book. My editor at Digital Writer Success says I write folksy, but I like to think it's just, I write like I talk, and I just take out the ums and the redundancies. So my queries and synopsises match my book. So immediately they're getting a sense about me and how I write and what I've got for them. Now, when it comes to nonfiction, you do not necessarily have to have the entire book written. I sold the Work at Home Success Bible just on a proposal. The book was not written. I had 3 chapters written. But with Digital Writer Success, they were like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Send us the manuscript. And so I had to finish the manuscript before they would commit to doing the book. So you may have to have it. The good news is that if you have a proposal, it's basically your outline. So then you just write the book. On the other hand, if you've written the book, it's easy to write the proposal, right? Because it's already written. So, all right, fiction synopsis. The only thing I hate more than synopsis is writing log lines and taglines and condensing my book into one sentence. The more you have to condense your book into I just find it really hard. If I could find somebody and pay them to do it, I would, because it's really hard. The synopsis is the summary of your story. It tells the story in the present tense. Most books are in past tense when they're written. Jane walked into work today. But in your synopsis, it will be Jane walks into work, okay? And it has a beginning, middle, and end. If you are a mystery writer, tell them who the killer is. There seems to be this sense out there that if you leave the editor or agent hanging, they're going to love it so much they're going to want to read the book. They're going to hit delete, even if it was a great synopsis, okay? Because synopsis tell the story. They have to know the whole story to know if they want to read more. Okay, so it tells the whole story, beginning, middle, and end. You use the tone and style of the book. The cozy that I've written is a little bit humorous. Okay, so I have that in my synopsis. If you've written a horror story, it should be dark and scary, like a horror story. You need to jump immediately in the story. Do not waste time setting things up and backstories. It's really hard. My first attempts at synopsises are usually, 5 or 6 pages, and then I just have to work and whittle it down to 1 or 2 pages. Give a sense of character. Okay, a story is about a person who has a certain way of thinking about the world and behaving in the world, who has a goal, who then runs into all sorts of problems, either internally and externally. That's what happens in a story. Harry Potter has all sorts of problems because people are trying to kill him, and all that. That's what makes the story. If it's just a day in the life of whatever, that's not a story. So you really need to give a sense of the character and their motivation, the conflicts, the goals that they're trying to achieve. And you want to keep to your main points and the main conflict, even if you have all sorts of plot things going on, side plots and things like that. You don't have enough room to include those. So you want to stick with the main bits of the story. Okay? Now, if you go online and Google a thing like sample synopsises, that's what I would do. I always, and see samples of synopsis or synopsi. I don't know, to give you a sense of how they do it. And when they do it for a book that you've read, then you can really kind of understand, oh, they left out this part, and they, this is how they explain that character. Number 5, you need to write a query letter. In a lot of ways, we're kind of working backwards, right? Because the query is what they see first, but we're going from the big and condensing the story down to a synopsis, condensing the story down to a query letter. This is the first thing that they're going to see and make the decision whether or not to look at your proposal or synopsis, okay? So it's like really important. Okay, fiction. I've kind of switched to here, fiction. Okay, this is sort of the template that I use when I am writing a query letter. So you mention them by name. Their name will be online. Use it. Dear Mr. Smith, okay? If you have some special reason that you chose them, you were referred to them, you met them, the editor at Digital Writer Success, I knew other authors that this publisher had published with, and they were at Virginia Festival of the Book, and I went to his table and I said, I got this idea for this book, and he said, yeah, send it to me. So when I emailed him, I said, I met you at Virginia Festival of the Book. Now, if you didn't met them, you weren't referred, you can just leave that bit out, unless there's a special reason you selected them. Like maybe there's something about their bio on the website that you really felt you gravitate to, and you might mention that to them, okay? Then you need to craft an invisible hook. That means you grab them by the lapels and shake them and like, read this book, okay? In fiction, a lot of times if you have a really great first line in your synopsis, you can just use that. I always try to just repurpose stuff I've already used. So, if your opening line is, Jane walks into work and the pizza boy kidnaps her, that's a pretty good hook. I mean, I think somebody would be like, why is the pizza boy at her work and why is he kidnapping her, okay? And then you might have a short synopsis, a little bit, kind of like the blurb you see at the back of the book, that explains a little bit more about the book, just enough, that they get a sense of what the book is about. Not here. Not here. It's sort of like the blurb, when you turn over the book and see the blurb, it's kind of like that, maybe not quite that long, but kind of that idea. So for the Valentine books, I started out talking about how Tess, has left a cushy job and her $1 million trust fund and a cheating boyfriend to move to Central Virginia to have a quiet single life, and the only comforts are in Marvin Gaye tunes and French lingerie or something like that. That was the opening line. And then she gets invited to a dinner and finds the host dead, type of thing. And I'm summarizing. You could read the blurb that's on the back of Deadly Valentine to get a better sense of what I said. But it was sort of like that, okay? Details about the book. This is where you have to say the genre and maybe the word count. Death of a Debtor is a 75,000 word cozy mystery that takes place in Central Virginia, type of thing. Reveal your credentials and your publishing savvy, or at least who you are. So if you have published, or you are an expert, or whatever, something that gives you some credibility, you want to share that. If you don't have any of that, that's okay, okay? You can just share kind of why you wrote the book. My name is Jane, and I wrote this book because one day I walked into the work and the pizza guy was acting weird, and I wondered, what would happen if he kidnapped me? I mean, you could say something like that, Let them know what you've included and like what you're sending now. And what you're sending now should be exactly what they asked for, no more, no less. So if they've said, I want a query and a synopsis, say, I've attached the synopsis. If they say, I want a synopsis and the 3 first chapters, say, I've attached the synopsis and the 3 first chapters, okay? Say what you can send if they request it. So you can let them know the book is complete and finished and ready to send if you have any interest in it, okay? And then the ending, is an ending a salutation or a... I don't know what it is, but it's the thanks so much for considering me, sincerely, your name. Okay, so Query letters for nonfiction are not that much different. It's the same. Greet, dear Mr. Smith, you still want an irresistible hook. You know, for the Work at Home Success Bible, I talked about putting my kids on the bus and watching all these poor schlubs having to drive to work in their ties and everything. And I was in my PJs and I sat down at my computer and I took a nap in that afternoon or something like that, right? So, you know, in nonfiction, it could also be some sort of statistic. 137 million people have a work-at-home job, so why are people still losing millions of dollars to scams? Okay, that might be a hook. Details about the book. Digital Writer Success is a 70,000-word book that tells people how they can make a living online with words. And then I might highlight stuff. You know, readers will learn how to choose a blog topic that makes money. They'll learn how to monetize their blog. They'll learn how to pitch an article. They'll learn how to self-publish an ebook. Your credentials. I make a living blogging, freelance writing, and writing books on the internet. If I had my other writing credits, I would include that type of stuff. If you don't have writing credits, why are you a good person to write this book? I am an expert on tulips. I have successfully kept the deer from eating my tulips for the last 20 years. And if that's true of any of you, I want to hear about it. Right now they're eating my peaches. Okay. What you're sending now, again, what they asked for. Okay. So they asked for a query and a proposal. That's what you've included. A lot of times in the proposal, they'll tell you how many chapters they want. 2 or 3 is usually what they ask for. So you should have 2 or 3 chapters ready to go. And what you can send if requested. So sometimes they just want the query. So under what I can send if requested, you could say, I have a full proposal prepared if you are interested, or the manuscript is completed. Now, if the manuscript is not completed, then you would give them an estimated date. I could have this manuscript completed by November 12th. Okay. 6, find the right agent or publisher. And this is where people seem to get stuck. I get asked this all the time. How do you find these people? So I'm going to tell you. First of all, where you can find them. They're actually everywhere if you go on the internet. You could actually even do a Google search on something like literary agencies that represent mystery fiction, literary agencies that represent coffee table books, you know, whatever it is that you're writing. The writing magazines, we've got The Writer, The Writer's Digest, Poets and Writers. A lot of times in each of their issues, a lot of times at the back they'll have some there, although often they're by subject. So, you know, this month they might just have agents and places that you could submit that are about home and garden. And if your book's not home and garden, you're kind of out of luck. But almost all of them have them on their website. Writer's Digest has a database that you can pay to access if you want to. Then there's this big old lunker book, right? You've seen this book. You don't have to go out and buy the new one. I would get one that came out in the digital age. Mine's 2009. You might even pick newer, you know, only 5 years old or something like that. And then you use it to go and find your genre, you know, who represents mystery or who publishes mystery or whatever it is. And then you go to whatever website's in the book and look it up, because the website's always going to have the most current information, because agents change, publishers and editors change, what they represent changes. So you don't want to trust what's in the book, even if it's the 2018 or 2019 edition. So if you get, you know, you go in, they're going to have the website. Go to the website and see what's there, okay? Join writers groups. I found my agent and a publisher by mingling with other writers, okay? And I thought, well, that sounds like a good person for me. I'm going to go pitch them, okay? Attend writing conferences and workshops, okay? Like this, you're here today. There's all sorts of cool stuff you can go to. The Virginia Writers Club is getting ready to put on a symposium in November. Writer House has all sorts of stuff that's out there. And you can learn something, but you mingle with your tribe. And I'll tell you what, writing can get really hard. If you're writing, you know it's true. And when you talk to people about your writing, particularly when you start talking about your characters like they're real people, people think you're nuts. But all you know that I'm not nuts. You understand. Or when I start complaining about how I do my best writing when I'm driving, and it's gone when I get home. You all understand that. Nobody else does. So there's a lot to be gained from getting out and mingling with other writers. And all you have to do is go online and Google, writers in Central Virginia. They're everywhere. You're tripping over us already and you don't even know it. So what you want to look for when you're looking through these resources is who represents and publishes in your genre or category. Okay, so again, we're going back to, and when you go on the website and you look them up, some of them get very specific. So some of them will say, I represent historical romance and romantic suspense. And if I have a contemporary romance, I might think maybe that's not the right one, right? And most literary agencies, they have several agents. So, I'll go down and look for another one. So you want to fit in their niche as good as possible. Because thriller and suspense, while it might be mysterious, my agent won't represent it even though she says she represents mysteries, right? So you really want to look carefully. And I actually had some trouble with the work at Homesix's Bible because I was like, well, it's sort of a career book, but it's a business book too. So which should I do, And what do they want in a submission? And they're going to be different. Some are going to say query only. Some are going to say query and proposal. Some are going to say query in first 3 chapters. You have to pay attention to that because number 3 is you have to do what they tell you. If you send them something that they didn't ask for or you don't send them something they did ask for, thanks but no thanks. Because immediately right there, they know you don't know how to follow directions. And the process of getting a book out to the world is really hard. And you think it was hard to write it, wait until you start having to edit and do all the other crazy stuff that your agent and publisher are going to ask you to do. And some of it you're not going to like, and some of it you're going to be mad about. And, you're going to have to do it and follow the directions as best you can. So whatever they ask you to send, you send, no more, no less. Okay? So what happens if you start getting rejections? Well, first of all, if you get rejections, you're in a very fine club because Hemingway got them, Sylvia Plath got them, J.K. Rowling got them, Stephen King got them. Everybody gets them. Okay? It's just you have to accept that that's going to happen. And it's really hard. Almost all this is done by email now, right? So all of a sudden the reply comes back and you're like, ooh, and you tap, and then it's, usually it's that standard, thank you for your submission, but right now we are not, whatever. So you're going to get them. So first of all, you want to ask yourself, what is your rejection threshold? Okay? There are stories about people who have hundreds of these things and finally got a book deal, okay? Some people, get 10, and it's like, that's it, I've had enough, And everybody's going to be a little bit different. Your rejection threshold might also vary based on the responses you're getting. So if you are getting feedback, that's a good sign. I mean, if they have taken the time to send you a note beyond the regular thanks but no thanks, you want to pay attention to that. So if they're saying, we really enjoyed, this character, but it's not a fit for us, or we're moving away from cozy mysteries, or whatever it is, that's something. That means I've got something here, I should keep going, okay? Also, are you pitching the right agents and publishers? Go back and look. Are you really sliding into the niche that they represent? And is your submission the best it can be? Is it really finished? And of course, we all know they're never finished. I could go back and rewrite all my books, but it really needs to be polished and tight and succinct. So what can you do? After you've looked at that, what can you do? Well, one thing you could do is submit your book to a contest, because one of the challenges you have is knowing, is this book even any good? Am I just going to keep submitting and it's terrible and never get anywhere? And it used to be that was the idea. As a matter of fact, when self-publishing came out, there were some really mean rock star authors out there saying, it was that whole, what's the thing about teachers who aren't experts, they teach, or what, that saying, it was that same thing, authors who can't get their book in a traditional bill, But that's not true. We know it's not true. There are self-published authors that have proven that there are readers out there who are willing to read outside the lines, and, are certainly very good writers. And a contest is going to have a professional that tells you if your submission is any good, because the judges of contests usually are in the publishing industry. Okay, so they're going to come back and they're going to say, the first 30 pages of this was really great. It started to fall apart in the middle, or, whatever it's going to be. And so then you can say, okay, I got something here. Plus, even if you don't win the contest, you can take something that they said and use it in your query letter. Deadly Valentine made it to the quarterfinals in one of Amazon's Breakthrough Author Awards. I use that all the time. It's top 100, so it's like not great, but thousands of people, I made it past thousands of people, so I used it. Okay? Hire a developmental editor or seek critique, and we talked about that before. A developmental editor is going to go through and say, this is weak, and this doesn't make sense, and all this kind of stuff. Reassess the agents and publishers on your list. If you're shooting for the stars and want to get, Hatchet or, one of those Simon & Schusters and stuff, or one of their imprints, and it's not going very well, there's a lot of smaller presses out there. And I'm not going to say that it's easier to get in a smaller press. They still are going to vet. They still want quality, but there's less people pitching them. So you have a better chance of getting into them. Or maybe think ebook. There's a lot of ebook only publishers out there. And I'll tell you what, it's great to have a print book. It just feels wonderful to hold it and take it somewhere. But I make more money on my ebooks than my print books. I sell more ebooks than my print books. On my self-published books, I make more money per ebook than print book. So, don't just think, oh, ebook isn't as good, because you could still do very, very well with an ebook only. So kind of look at who you're pitching and maybe broaden your horizon about who you're willing to consider. And then finally, just like, I'll just self-publish it, okay? And I don't know what time it is, but I'm going to hurry here. I'm going to tell you a quick story. Deadly Valentine is the first book in the Valentine Mystery series. It is a cozy mystery, but it breaks the rule about no intimate bits. So it's highly romantic. So when I was pitching it, all the mystery people are saying, you got to take those bits out. And all the romance people are like, man, you got to ramp up those bits. But romances do not go in a continuing series with the same couple. Very rarely. Twilight did it, the 50 Shades books did it, but it was limited. It was 3 or 4 books, okay? And of course I have 6 books now in this series. So I had to make a decision. Do I ramp up the heated bits and just sell it as a one-off book? Do I take all those bits out and sell it as a cozy? I knew I wanted to write and have a series, a romantic mystery series with a couple, kind of like Nick and Nora Charles, only they actually sleep in the same bed, right? And so that's when I made the decision, you know what, I'm going to self-publish. So that's why I made that decision for that book. So after all this, you're sort of looking at what are my options? You have options now that you didn't have before. And if that book does well, there's a young, I don't know if she's young, she's a woman I listen to on audio tape a lot who is self-published, and she's gangbusters, and at first I didn't know she was self-published, and I kept looking for her books in the stores, and I couldn't find them and couldn't find them. Finally I was like, golly, this girl's, God, she's doing well. Well, the other day I'm in the bookstore, and there's a book of hers, and I turn it over, and it's St. Martin's. Okay. First of all, I'm wondering why she's even doing that, because clearly she's doing well enough she doesn't need a publisher. But sometimes one can lead to the other. The opposite of that is there's a lot of mid-list authors who are buying back the rights to their books and are turning around and self-publishing them. Okay? So you have options to do one or either or the both. And mostly that's what I wanted to show you today. So don't feel, it is sort of discouraging to get the no's and the rejections. But there are other options if you believe your book needs to be out in the world. And with that said, questions?
You can do both then? You've done both hard copy and ebook with the same book?
Yes, a lot of my publishers come out ebook first and print later. Some of them do it at the same time, and then when I self-publish, it's always ebook. Like the book that came out yesterday is ebook only at the moment. It's just a lot more work to create a print book. It's harder to make the cover because you have to have the front, the spine, and the back, and it's a whole different type of formatting. So, and since I sell more ebooks, I always, get the ebook out first and work on the print later. Yeah.
But you could do it if you self-publish.
Oh yeah, yeah. And it's, really it's free. If you feel comfortable formatting, you want to pay for the editor and a cover designer. But if you're comfortable doing the formatting, you upload to wherever, Kindle, Nook, iBooks. There's places like Smashwords and Draft to Digital that will distribute your ebook out to all the ebook providers except for Kindle. So it goes to iBooks and Kobo. And then you go over to CreateSpace or you go to Ingram Spark and you upload your book there, and they're going to have a print copy for you. And that's free. They do have paid things you can do, but yeah. It depends how much you want to do DIY your book. Yeah. Lauren?
When you self-publish, okay, I was fortunate to get into CreateSpace while they were still offering editing, cover design, marketing help, etc. And what I found is it's difficult to try and parse the ones that are just there, the self-publishing platforms that are just there to sort of suck your money out of you, the vanity rates, okay?
Yeah.
From the real self-publishing platforms that want you to get out there and be successful. Now that CreateSpace has essentially gone belly up as far as anything except providing a platform for you to upload and have printed, where do you go to find honest, self-publishing sites that are there to help you and not just stuff their pockets with money?
Well, I always talk with other people. I mean, you could do a Google search, but, the research is hard and you're not sure. But, when talking to people, Ingram Spark is a good one. And their print-on-demand program, I think you can arrange to have returns, which could help you get your book in the store, even as Ingram Spark. But talking to other people, Writers Weekly has a whispers and warnings section, and I think Absolute Right also has forums there where you can go in and, people will say, stay away from these people, they're terrible. Or you could post a question saying, I found this place, does anybody know about them, what do you think, type of thing. So I always just try to network and reach out to people. I feel much more comfortable getting personal stories from people than, trusting my own ability to research them, because they ask for money, a lot of those places. I mean, like thousands. Now, let me say, in both self-publishing and traditional publishing, you're going to have to market your book. You have to sell your book either way, and publishers are going to ask you how to do it. One of the first things you fill out is how you're going to sell this book. Some of these places that are scamming, or I don't want to say scamming, but taking advantage, are saying that they're offering a lot of marketing services, but I really question how effective they are, because how do they know your reader? They're not going to do your social media for you. So I really question some of the things that they do. I would spend my money on a PR person before I would spend my money on something like that. So.
What made you decide to write under a different name?
I chose to use a pen name because I already sort of was known online as Leslie Truex, and I just wanted to separate the brands. My mother knows what I write. My dad knows what I write. So I wasn't really I don't want to say hiding. Not everybody necessarily knows that I do that. But it was mostly because I already had a name sort of in the work-at-home world and, making money online or making money from home. And I didn't want to confuse people with okay, what's this other thing that's out there? So I decided to go with a pen name. I will say it's hard because I have to be two people every day. I have to go to 2 Facebook platforms. I have to go to 2 Instagram platforms. I have to go, I have to run multiple websites. So, I would recommend you think about it before you do it. But I have met romance authors who are like, my kids threatened me if I published under my own name. So, or I can't let my mother know what I'm writing type of thing. So, that's out there too. Sometimes also, for example, when I went to sell this cozy mystery, I was a little concerned because it was very different from what I've already written. Because my romances and the Valentine mysteries are highly romantic, and the cozy isn't. I mean, there's a love interest, but it's a cozy, right? And so we talked about, do I need to create another name to separate those? And the publisher, thank God, said no. And I just put something on my website that's like, do you want to read a romance? Do you want to read a romantic mystery? Do you want to read a cozy? and then people can, you know, ferret out for themselves. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little more about the platform? Is that your website, your Facebook? I mean, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
when you say a platform?
One of the things I handed out here, because that's a whole other workshop, and there's books on it as well, platform building for authors, and again, I have a section in digital writers that that's about. But basically, it's sort of defining who you are as a writer, who's the most likely reader of your book, where do they hang out, you know, do they come to things like this, do they belong to groups in the community, where do they belong online, what blogs do they read, what websites do they read, and what's the best way to engage them. And I'm going to use a story here from somebody I was talking to. It was just last week about engaging people what they do because they travel a lot. And I was saying, you know what, you should go to Instagram because that's a picture-oriented platform. Almost everybody should be on Facebook, but maybe Instagram over Pinterest. But if you have a cookbook, you should be a Pinterest. I get all my recipes on Pinterest. I go there first. I don't even Google it, right? So where to find them. And then here, basically, I have kind of, the middle is my website. It's my hub. It's the center, my home from which everything happens. And then these different circles are some of the different things that you can choose to do or not to do to help you, and they work together. So here would be social media or building a community. And down here is, you know, outreach. Over here would be media and PR, events and speaking. I was up in Malice Domestic in Bethesda, which is very fun. If you're a mystery reader, you absolutely have to go. And then beginning of August, I'm going to Suffolk, which is another mystery author event that's always very fun. So that's one thing I do to help sell my books. And then your books can sell your books, right? So the back of my books say, these are the other stuff that I've written. So go check it out. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, but really deciding how you're going to market your book really depends on your topic, who your audience is, and what's the best way to reach them. So.
Anybody else? Thank you so much. That
Well,
was a lot of great information.
Let me just say that I forgot to thank you for having me, and LMOA for having me, and for all of you for coming, because I was really thinking, good golly, it's the middle of summer. They're probably all in, well, maybe not Disneyland because it's hot, but, you know, off somewhere at the beach. So I really appreciate you all coming out. So I have chocolate here, too, for anybody, as my thank you for coming out. So.
Thank you so
All right.
much. It was great.